The one good thing is that they do have a very, very easy schedule for the first 8 weeks. So we'll see if that helps them out at all. Hello and welcome to another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks. I'm Jason, he's Vaz, and today we're going over some of the most significant news from week 2 of the NFL preseason. Obviously, there are a lot of issues that can change somebody's value, whether it be redraft or for dynasty, whatever format you're playing. So these are very significant news issues, and we're going to dig into the top 10 stories from week 2. So, Vaz, tell us about your 10th biggest story from week 2.
Okay, so week 2 of the preseason brought some clarity for the Dallas Cowboys depth chart overall. At quarterback, Cooper Rush played one series and then he was done. So I think it's been solidified that he's the number 2 quarterback and Trey Lance is the number 3. Trey Lance played very well in this game, but he's clearly the number 3 option. And then what everybody's most interested in is the running back depth chart, right? In Dallas. So Zeke didn't play and Rico Dowdle didn't play. So I think it's very clear that those are the 1 and 2 options in that backfield. And then the third running back out was Malik Davis, followed by Royce Freeman. So I think if you're hanging on to some hope with like a Snoop Conner or a Deuce Vaughn, I think these guys are pretty much droppable now.
Fair enough, and that was my plan, was take a risk on one of these guys, Snoop Conner, and then see what happens until training camp to see if a lottery ticket hit. Like I said in my bold predictions for this season, my bold prediction is that Ezekiel Elliott would not be the lead running back by the end of the season as he ages a little bit more, and I expect at least one of these no names to do something. So we'll see if that comes true or not.
I'm gonna jump in here. I'm a little bit more optimistic now about Zeke because like a guy like Malik Davis or Rico Dowdle don't really scare me. You know, I think Zeke is just a better overall player. So I'm a little bit more optimistic that Zeke can handle a large role now.
Okay, fair enough. I was surprised with Lance because, like you mentioned, Trey Lance looked like he was playing well, and there's always those people that like to hold on to those guys, just thinking, oh, maybe he'll still become something. Is it time to drop Lance or to try to trade him for a 4th?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if you can trade him for a 4th, I think that's a great move. I mean, you could drop him if you need the roster spot as well. It's not easy to hold third quarterbacks on your roster, right? That being said, I know it's difficult to do because you probably used a high draft pick on him. And then he does have that like rushing upside where if he were ever given an opportunity, he could be a very good player for fantasy. But I mean, at this point, he's behind Cooper Rush. Yeah, it's probably time to drop him.
Okay, let's take a look at your 9th biggest story from week 2.
Okay, my 9th biggest story is a bit of a surprise, I imagine. It's an odd one. It's some will say a no story, a non-story, but it's the Carolina Panthers not playing Bryce Young in the preseason in weeks 1 and 2. For me, this is like kind of a significant move by that franchise because you know what? Sometimes, as they say, actions speak louder than words. And I think in this scenario, in this case, the Panthers are telling us without telling us that they have full confidence in Bryce Young. By not playing him in these preseason games, they're telling us they believe in him. They don't see it in the preseason. They think that he's ready for week 1 of the NFL season. So I'm kind of hopeful that Bryce Young could have a turnaround this season. I mean, it might be a short-lived optimism, but at this moment, I'm a little bit optimistic.
Okay, because the flip side of that would be that he hasn't had the practice against, full speed, real competition. So might he get off to a slow start, maybe like in week 1 and week 2?
I mean, yeah, I guess that's perhaps possible, but he's got a better O-line in front of him than last season, better weapons around him. So I am feeling a little bit more optimistic because he hasn't played. The coaching staff is telling us that they are not so worried about him. Yeah. That's how I look at it anyways.
Yeah. I think ideally, if you're in a super flex league, you don't want him as your QB2 anyways. Ideally, he's your 3rd QB that you either gambled on to become something or, to set off your bye weeks, ideally. But
yeah, I'm thinking more in terms of like dynasty right now. Like,
okay, sure.
He's
for
got
value.
A little bit more upside. Yeah. Yeah.
Fair enough. What is your 8th biggest story from preseason week 2?
Okay, number 8. Number 8 is the LA Chargers looking like a hot pile of garbage. Okay.
Yes.
So their depth chart, their roster is like pretty much a complete mess at this point. Quentin Johnson played into the second half, along with Brennan Rice and Darius Davis, and I think that is a legitimate battle for the wide receiver 4 spot. Um, Even Ladd McConkey played in this game. So Joshua Palmer and DJ Chark didn't play. They seem like pretty much established starters. I think Ladd McConkey's probably starting out of the slot, but he even played. So that's a little bit worrisome. And then at running back, we had Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins didn't play, but then Jared Patterson was the first running back in. Vidal and Isaiah Spiller played a lot into the second half. So I think there's a little bit of a battle there for the RB3 spot as well. And then finally, Easton Stick, the backup quarterback, played like hot garbage. And man, if something happens at quarterback to the Chargers, they're in a world of hurt.
Fair enough. The way that they've played, because obviously Herbert hasn't been playing, is there any reason for concern from a Ladd McConkey standpoint?
I think there is. I think it's going to be like hard to find targets in that offense because I don't think they're going to move the ball very easily. Right. So I don't think they're going to score a lot of points. I have a feeling this could be one of the worst offenses in football. I just nothing about that offense like speaks like optimism toward me. So I am worried about Ladd McConkey, about Justin Herbert, about everybody in that offense.
Fair enough. What is your seventh biggest story from week 2 of the preseason?
Okay, number 7, Raheem Mostert and Devon Achane split first team carries, as we probably could have expected. Raheem Mostert got more work than Achane, and I'm taking from this that I'm surprised that they're so far apart in redraft. I think they should be a lot closer together. I think Achane is being taken far too early, and perhaps Mostert is being taken too late. I think Mostert is going to handle more of like the red zone touches, the goal line touches, the short yardage touches. I think he's probably going to get more work than Achane. I think it's going to look a lot similarly to how it looked last year. And I do not think that they should be this far apart in drafts.
I love that take because I think I've believed it, but I've never either said it or heard it be said. But now that I've actually physically heard that, it was like, yeah, that makes total sense and that matches with how I feel, but I've just never verbalized that myself. But I agree exactly that. Yeah, absolutely. Mostert should be added on sleeper lists, and I've been fading H in the whole time going into this, especially for redraft anyways. What is your sixth biggest story?
Okay, my sixth biggest story is the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is a mess. Okay. We saw Russ come in and play 5 series and throw for 47 yards, get 1 first down. He was sacked 3 times, couldn't get anything going, even against the second team defense, and then like played the entire first half and didn't do anything. And then Justin Fields came in, looked a little bit better because he was able to scramble, using his legs. That's why he looked better. But like his arm, he didn't do that much with his arm. So yeah, I'm really worried about that offense. I know, as you've said, they have a very easy schedule. I looked at their schedule. They play a lot of bad defenses, and that's really the only reason you could feel optimistic about drafting somebody from that team in fantasy football. But like, I worry about their ability to score points. And now they just lost Jaylen Warren to an injury as well, and he's looking like he may miss a couple weeks. So yeah, I'm very worried about that offense. I don't think they have enough playmakers. I mean, things could change if they add somebody. Maybe they make a trade for a wide receiver 1 that we've been hearing in the news. But if they don't, like, I'm very worried, especially because that offensive line just looks so terrible. Like Russell Wilson had no time. Oh man, I'm very worried about that Steelers offense.
Yeah, they just suffered another injury on their offensive line as well. I think their starting center went down. They drafted a center, the second round of the draft. So I think they were hoping to kind of bring him in slowly, but it looks like the rookie's going to be pushed in for week 1. So yeah, the line could take some time to gel, but like you mentioned, the one good thing is that they do have a very, very easy schedule for the first 8 weeks. So we'll see if that helps them out at all. What is your sixth biggest story?
So actually my 5th biggest story at number 5 is we got some clarity in the Los Angeles Raiders quarterback room. Gardner Minshew was named the starter over Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew both played, and had some ups and downs in their preseason two game, in their second preseason game. But following that game, after Aidan O'Connell threw an ugly pick six, Gardner Minshew was named the starter. And I think that offense, while it's not going to be spectacular by any means, I think they have enough weapons that Gardner Minshew could score some points. So I think Gardner Minshew has kind of some upside to be a quarterback too in fantasy football.
Okay. Do you think there's a chance that O'Connell will get some action, or do you think Minshew holds on to that job throughout the season, barring injury?
No, I mean, if I'm a betting man, I think Aidan O'Connell will play.
Hmm.
I think, Gardner Minshew has not shown over the course of his career that, he can sustain good football for long periods of time. I think he's an okay player. I think he's a very good backup, but
Yeah.
an NFL starter, I do not think so. So I think
Yeah.
we will see Aidan O'Connell at some point. That being said, I'm not drafting Aidan O'Connell. Now that we
Yeah.
know Gardner Minshew is a starter, if I need a quarterback, I'd be going with him.
Okay. Let's take a look at your fourth biggest story.
Okay, number four is Rashee Rice, a guy I love. Looks firmly to me like the wide receiver one in Kansas City. Mahomes played two drives, and on the second drive, targeted Rashee Rice, I think, four times in a row. He had four catches on the game. Xavier Worthy also looked good. Got wide open on one play and caught a long pass. Had a bit of trouble on other plays as well, but for me, the biggest takeaway was Rashee Rice is clearly the number one option in that passing game. And I think he's going to be like a low end wide receiver one in fantasy football this season. So I'm
Okay.
big on Rashee Rice.
Yeah. No, he certainly, like you mentioned, when you watch the preseason game, you stop thinking about that pending suspension coming, because when you're watching, it's like, yeah, okay, that looks like a guy that's going to score some points this season. What is your third biggest story?
Okay, number three for me is the Washington offense overall. There's a lot of clarity here. Jaden Daniels played very well, 10 for 12 passing. He only played two drives, but he got his offense in a scoring position both times. Um, he hit Terry McLaurin for three receptions, and he hit Dyami Brown for three as well, who looked really good. And I think it's possible that he's the number two receiver over Jahan Dotson. So Dyami Brown might be a nice sleeper in fantasy football. And then there's a little bit of it's an ugly backfield there. I think B-Rob broke off three good runs, and Austin Eckler wasn't really used as much. It looked like Brian Robinson could be the early down smasher, and then Austin Eckler will be used like maybe exclusively on third downs or every third series or something like that. So it could be pretty ugly there from a fantasy perspective in that backfield.
Yeah, looking at some of the other analysis that I've been watching since that game, a lot of people have been saying that Robinson looks like he might be the 1A in that
Yeah.
backfield going into the start of the season. So we'll see. And I'm really, really high on Jaden Daniels going the season. So glad to hear that he's looking good as well. What is your second biggest story from preseason week 2?
Okay, my second biggest story is the Raiders running back room has given us more clarity. I think at this stage, there's one guy you want to be drafting, and that's Zamir White. Zamir White played the first two series for the Raiders. Madison didn't. So Zamir White looked great, by the way. So what we've seen from Zamir White in the NFL is he's looked good. Like last season, the end of the season, he played very, very well. And through the first 2 weeks of the preseason, he's played well as well. He ripped off a couple big runs. I think he had 3 carries for like 30 yards or something like that. Played very well. And then Alexander Madison came in on the third series, and he played well as well. He caught some caught some passes. So it looks like to me that Zamir White could be used on first and second downs, and then maybe Alexander Madison could be the third down running back. I think that's possible. But if the Raiders are winning, I think they'll want to be smashing Zamir White, giving the ball to Zamir White early and often. So I think that's going to be maybe a sneaky pick for fantasy.
All right. Yeah. As a guy who's had Madison in a couple of different leagues going into last season with very high hopes that he had the lead job, I was like, oh, yes, this is going to be so. And then, oh, God, have I ever been more disappointed
Yeah,
in a guy that I had such high hopes on last year? I'll tell you right now, I have zero expectations
yeah.
out of Madison going into this season. If he does something, I mean, just my luck that I, trade him away and then he does something this year. Who knows?
Now, I can't do it for you. The inches we need are everywhere around us. What are you gonna do?
Like! Like! Subscribe! 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 Before we get to number 1, let's get to some honorable mentions.
Okay, sure thing. So I've got two here, but my first one is just that I think Caleb Williams is legit. He had a rough start to this second preseason game, but after he settled in a little bit, he made one impeccable throw where he was rolling to his left and he hit Rome Odunze like 40 yards down the field off his back foot. Like, I think he's just going to give us, one or two of those throws per game. He's a game breaker. He can do it with his legs. So I made sure this was an honorable mention. I didn't want to keep it in my list because we know at this point that Caleb Williams is good, but I think it's worth mentioning just because that throw was awesome.
Yeah. Speaking of awesome throws, did you see the behind the back pass from Patrick Mahomes to Kelsey? And any thoughts on it?
Yeah, great segue, by the way. Yeah, I did see that. That was fun. My only thought would be like, I wonder if we'd ever see that in the regular season, because I think that's something you would only do in the preseason, but it was fun to watch.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. A little bit of hot dogging. And they've been
Yeah.
talking about that, leading up to that moment that, Andy Reid actually said to him, hey, if you see an behind the back pass, go for it. Because he had done it in practice. So
Yeah.
who knows? Can you imagine if we actually saw that in the real season or in the playoffs or Super Bowl? That would be absolutely
Yeah.
nuts. Did you have another honorable mention?
I did. I had one. So another one is actually a running back out of KC named Carson Steele. Somebody who I'm not familiar with, but he came in as the first running, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Isaiah Pacheco are clearly, I think clearly 1 and 2 at this point. Like Isaiah Pacheco number 1 and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I expect is number 2. But Carson Steele played before Deneric Prince, which was a really, really surprising to me. I thought Deneric Prince was fighting for the number 2 job, but then Deneric Prince played a lot in this game, like into the second half. And Carson Steele, who's listed as a fullback, but is like a pretty like solid, 5'11", 215 pounds, was used in the receiving game and was the first running back to get carries. So I think he's somebody that you want to be adding in Dynasty, just as like a shot in the dark, basically.
Mhm.
I don't
Waiver
know what
wire
he's going to
flyer.
be. Yeah, a waiver wire flyer. I think just because that offense is so good, if he has a role maybe on third downs, or if an injury happens to, or if they get rid of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe he doesn't make the team, or who knows what could happen. I just think it's worth looking into. Carson Steele.
Okay. I noticed that the Vikings signed Matt Corral, recently. They've got Nick Mullins and Jaron Hall behind Darnold there. Any interest in Matt Carroll? I mean, if Darnold were to get injured, then it's, that's a great place to be a quarterback. Mullins and Corral, does it matter?
It matters. I don't think Corral's worth adding. I think he's probably like a camp body. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
somebody, I don't know. Maybe he'll be, I expect him to be cut at the end of training camp. But yeah, I would say like that JJ McCarthy injury really sucks. I think it's worth talking about that JJ McCarthy injury because it's Sam Darnold's show now,
Yeah.
And but in terms of like the weapons there, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, I think you have to lower them a little bit just because if Sam Darnold doesn't play well, there was always the hope that they could go to JJ McCarthy and he could play well, and then those weapons could have added value. But now it looks like it's Sam Darnold's show, right? So if he struggles, those weapons are not going to get the ball as often. So I think you do for fantasy football this season. I think you do have to lower those guys a little bit.
If you have a roster spot available, or let's say like you have to drop a fourth or fifth wide receiver to do so, is a guy like Nick Mullins worth rostering in case Darnold does falter and he gets the next shot?
Personally, for me, no, because I know what Nick Mullins is. So I don't ever want to be putting Nick Mullins into my starting lineup,
Yeah.
Even if he does have those weapons. So for me, no. I think it's Sam Darnold's show at this stage.
Okay, fair enough. Then, without any further ado, what was your biggest story from week 2 of the preseason?
Okay, my biggest story from week 2 of the preseason is a guy I've been hammering about for a couple weeks now. Ray Davis, running back out of Buffalo, had an amazing game. He had 8 carries for 58 yards and a touchdown and looked freaking awesome. Okay, he was bouncing off guys and looked to me, like I've said before, looked like a Maurice Jones-Drew type player. Like he's a bowling ball at 5'8", 215 pounds, but he has enough speed and agility to get the outside, get the perimeter. Like I think he's a good player, and I think he's shown now that this is going to be a 1-2 punch in Buffalo. I think he could be very, very interesting for fantasy football and for dynasty as well. So I personally, he's moving up my rankings. And if I don't have him in dynasty, I'm looking to buy him at this stage before he hits.
Would you give up a third round pick for him right now in Dynasty?
Yeah, without question. I'd give up a high third round pick without question.
Wow. Okay. I was gonna think a late third rounder, but a high one, even better.
I'd give up 2 third round picks for him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Ray Davis. All right, there you got it. Some very big news from week 2 in the preseason. A lot of this is gonna, help set you up for the upcoming season, whether it be in dynasty formats or redraft leagues. Let us know what you think about these stories, though. Do you agree with these? Or are there any things that you disagree with? Let us know in the comment section below, and we'll respond to you as well. Otherwise, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time on another edition of Fantasy Football Freaks.
Peace.